The owner's name is going to be appearing in reviews. They're going to be a very essential part, and especially with how geographically tied down a venue is, right? It's not a service that's just kind of everywhere. It's a venue that's located in a community. And oftentimes that owner has invested in the community. And so it is a very personal thing, right?
Venue owners have to make 1,000,001 decisions every single day, especially in the startup phase. To get rewarded for some of that, especially early on, you're like, okay, this might be worth it, right? Like I am starting to see a shred of hope again. There's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Venue RX. We have yet another one of these limited series with Lindsay Lucas. Thanks so much for being here. This is fun. I love these. These are great.
Yeah, it's super fun. I look forward to it every week. This is awesome.
Well, you have a sweet new podcast setup, which I won't fully get into, but I really am excited to see kind of the quality and how this turns out. And I know you're going to be using it for your rebuilding TVA. You're doing a bunch of your own content, right?
Yes. Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the setup. Y'all, I was like, I want to have a more professional thing. And I messaged Jonathan and was like, can you just send me a shopping list? Like, I don't know specs. I don't know anything. And he literally sent me all of the links and I just hit buy on everything. So thank you for making it easy for me. So I have burned down TVA and rebuilding it completely from scratch. I wanted a more professional, but the first version, it was like, let's bootstrap this kind of thing. And I just recorded it locally on my computer, which worked great for the first version and helped a lot of students because I just needed to get the information out there. But now I'm ready to up-level things. So there's that, there's this with you, and there's my podcast with Kinsey. And then we have a few other things in the works too. So yeah, it's money well spent.
I love it. Well, I'm super glad. And the setup, I'm biased to the setup that you have because I think it's a great setup, but I'm excited to see the content that you create. Okay, so this topic today is one that I'm excited to talk with you about because I think we're at different ends. Like you help people at the beginning of their journey, right? For anyone, actually, just really quick, for anyone who's just kind of maybe joining us for the first time or just discovered the podcast, can you kind of share a little bit about what you do and where generally you meet people in their venue ownership journey?
Yeah, so I specialize in rural startups, and we basically take our clients through the funding phase all the way to building their business on the back end. So I'm happy to talk to builders and architects and review plans and think through things logistically as far as the initial footprint is concerned. But that's where we really shine, is where my team comes in and we build the business on the back end. So contract, policies and procedures, packages, pricing, scaling, how do we make it profitable? Your starting off price, and then moving through your tiers, when to do that, how to launch, how to hire, how to host your first event, like everything to do with getting the business off the ground and essentially to that year 2, year 3 mark. And then a lot of times we have past clients that come back to us because in the very beginning of our time working together, we have a very honest conversation. What's the end goal? Which feels a little awkward in the beginning. Like you haven't even secured funding yet. And I'm asking you, like, do you want to sell this thing? But it is important for getting the structure correctly within the business from day one and being able to scale later down the roads. And then eventually, if you do want to sell, you're sitting pretty at the end. But in the beginning, based on that conversation, we run projections to see if you do want to sell, when are you going to be at your peak so that you can sell? And at that point, a lot of clients come back to us and they say, we're loving this, but how do we make more money at this? Like we've hit our ceiling. And so we have a conversation about additional revenue streams. I have had a few clients that have come back and said, I have hit my numbers early. I'm ready to scale or I'm ready to sell and move on to the next thing. And so then we work with them for that too.
I was going to ask about that side of it. Is it, so when someone comes to you and maybe they've said, hey, I'd like to really max this thing out past my capability. When someone asks that question, is it a sales issue? Like they're not making enough sales, or is it like there's too much work for me to do and I need operational help?
Yeah, it's usually operational help.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of times they hit their number and their ceiling. I mean, you know this, venues, we sell calendar space, essentially, right? It's very pretty calendar space, but that's essentially what we're selling, and there's only so many dates. So once you hit that number, you either have to repackage your offering to where you're working less, but making the same, if not more money and revenue coming in. And they're thus increasing that profit margin, or you're adding on additional revenue streams. And so at that point, obviously what goes hand in hand with additional revenue streams and scaling is hiring your team and then you taking a higher position within the company.
Yeah, that's something that we definitely have. Well, I will say our business has gone through that transition itself. And also we've taken a number of businesses from zero in sales, essentially a new build, to having one salesperson, even to having me, my wife and I on the ground selling and setting up the venue and things like that, to then hiring one person, to hiring two people, to now hiring a team, to not stepping foot on the property for several months, like that process. And sometimes folks want to be there the whole time, and that's part of it. But some people want to get in, they want to start it, they want to run it for a couple of years, and then they want to do other things, because it's successful. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. And I'm curious. I want to kind of pick your brain on this, and I think kind of the audience picking your brain, and also me kind of sharing some of my reflections on it, because I think that venues go through phases, and there's like maybe a startup phase. And the startup phase is what you just described, right? Like funding and all your plans and everything, or even less professional and legit than that. Maybe it's like, hey, we've got, a barn and we want to do this. Like, what would it take to get permitted? And so regardless of the path you go, there's that startup phase. And that's what, through kind of like year one, because like everything's kind of crazy. Would you say it's year one?
Yeah, 12 to 18 months, depending on when you want to define the starting pay or the starting date, so to speak. So a lot of people will define it as soon as I sign that first contract, like we hit go and I've accepted my first deposit and have money rolling in. Some people define it as when they're hosting their very first event and their doors are open. So it just depends on what your definition of that is.
Okay, hot take for everyone. Maybe we make this into a clip for Instagram. You never know. Reels, shorts, all the places. I'm curious your take on when someone should start taking deposits, before or after their venue's complete.
Oh, before.
Before. You said that without hesitation.
Yes. Yeah.
But there are some people who want to wait because they don't know when construction's going to be done, what it's going to look like. They're a little nervous about some of these things, right? I've talked to them on the show. Yeah. So what would you say to that?
Totally valid feeling. And I think that has a lot to do with fear. They probably heard a lot of scary stories. And it's all valid, right? Like, one of the worst things that we can do as a startup is have to cancel our very first event because construction isn't done. Like, you're kind of shooting your reputation in the foot at that point. But that doesn't mean that you can't come back from it, right? Like, there are steps and measures that can be put in place. Now, the way that we like to do it with startups is because I love to pre-launch a venue. Like, I like to see money coming in, right? Like, that's totally for multiple reasons. Like, number one, for the bank, for your lenders, right? But number two, like, just good energy for moving forward. Like, venue owners have to make 1,000,001 decisions every single day, especially in the startup phase. And so to get rewarded for some of that, especially early on, you're like, okay, this might be worth it, right? Like, I am starting to see a shred of hope again. There's a light at the end of the tunnel kind of thing. So I'm a big fan of pre-launching. We do it very strategically with our clients, and we are in strong communications with the build team as well to make sure that things are moving appropriately. If we are working with a new construction venue, a good telltale sign for us to start pre-launching is when the sticks are up.
Framing, okay.
Yeah, framing. Sorry, yes, framing.
No, sticks are up is just the cool way of saying framing. I love it. Yeah. I'm wondering, do you, and we actually have in Weeva, we just, 2 or 3 days ago, we're talking about this with someone who, it's been like a 7-year process, Veronica. Yep. it's been a long process for her getting that venue launched. Now the sticks are up, right? She's really getting things going. Going back to the tours, like when to take that first deposit and this kind of telltale sign, is there a window? Like once sticks go up, is it kind of like, hey, you can start taking bookings a year out? Like, is there some sort of rule of thumb for that?
So average engagement is 12 months, So what we like to do is do it in phases as far as like marketing is concerned. And you're talking about whenever you first start talking about your venue, we are projected to be open in 2025. And then as you get further along, then you're talking about the season, right? Fall of 2025. And then the further that you get, the more specific that you start getting with opening and letting them know, like, okay, this is our official date that we are comfortable accepting a wedding. So I have one client right now, she's been marketing her venue like as soon as they got funding. I don't even think like they had broken ground and she was already talking and sharing logos and things like that. She's doing fantastic. And we are about to open up booking for her. And when we open up bookings for her, dirt work will have just completed. So slab won't be poured, sticks won't be up, plumbing won't be stubbed in, none of it. But I've been in heavy communications with her build team, and the structure that she's doing, they can throw that building up in 6 months. So it all depends on like, what are your variables? What type of like building are you doing? So I don't know. It's just more things to take into consideration.
What about going on the complete opposite end? Is there a too early in this? Like, hey, I want to start my venue. I'm planning to, get funding and do all the different stuff. And I know that I want it called, whatever the name is, Oak Hollow Events, whatever. I just made something up, right? Is there too early? Like, hey, I want to do this in 2027 and I'm just talking to the bank and it's 3 years before and I'm going to get my domain and kind of start talking about it. Is that too early? And if so, when is kind of an ideal time to grab some of those maybe non-physical pieces of the digital real estate that we all need?
Yeah. I mean, if the property that you're going after doesn't dictate the name, if you like some people know their children's names before they never even get married, right? Like, so if you just know, like, I want this business name, and I'll eventually have it, like, go ahead and get the domain. There's people that do that as a living. They just buy random domains as a living. So anyway, I think the answer to your question is it's all based on your risk tolerance, right? So if you want to be talking about this, for me personally, if I was starting a venue from scratch, if I knew that I was 3 years out from even securing funding, probably wouldn't really be talking about it publicly. I might share with family and close friends, like, hey, I really want to do this thing. Now it's not the right time, but I'm doing all of my due diligence and research and talking to other professionals and networking. Like, all of that is great. Go for it.
Join WEVA,
Yeah, join WEVA.
Plug there for the association, That's awesome. Okay, so we kind of zoomed in really tight on when to start selling, and that's obviously the kickoff of this startup phase, right? Or maybe not the kickoff, but certainly a very important element of it. Once you start taking the bookings, now, walking through that process of you've now started to execute some of the weddings, you are, in most cases, the people that you talk to, they are the owners, are the ones who are setting up the tables and chairs. There's some sort of natural division of labor based on usually who's good at what. Like, hey, I'm Mr. Smith Senior, and I have a background in law, so I'm going to put the contract together, and I'm also going to, I've kind of been a handyman on the property. I'm going to go out there and I'm going to set up the tables and chairs and kind of be there as a rough version of security, right? And someone else is out there, they're doing the tours, they're making sure. And early on, what could you kind of go through some of the different models for setting up the team that exists for properties?
Yeah. So I think you and I are kind of similar in the clients that we attract. Like, I might be specifically rural, but I have a mix of, sometimes I'm working with an investor that is professionally a real estate developer, and he doesn't want anything to do with the day-to-day business. So he hires our team to come in, build the business. he doesn't even care like structure. He doesn't have a whole lot of opinions. He wants us to hire everybody and just let him know when it's up and running, right? And then we also work with a lot of husband and wife teams. And so throughout our journey of working with them, there will come a point where we evaluate strengths and weaknesses. And then we start assigning roles and responsibilities, right? And then seeing where the gaps are and where we need to hire to fill those gaps and what that essentially looks like. So
sidebar, I want to just sidebar really quick on that. That is so important. Like if you're listening or watching this right now and you're going into business with family or friends or business, like that one piece of having a lane, and I'll give everyone a hot tip. We use something called Lucidchart to chart this out. And there are literal like swim lanes. And it's like a swim lane, like and you see in the Olympics, right? And there are swim lanes, and those swim lanes can literally have positions and names assigned to them. And so you know what you do, you know what the other person does. I love that you do that for your clients, because I think one of the ways that a partnership falls apart is because people are crossing into each other's lanes, and that gets to not feel good, because it's like, are you doing this? Am I doing this? Like we're critical of each other. It builds a lack of trust. So going into it with that conversation, instead of just saying, hey, we both like this, let's get into it. Like, hey, no, I'm really good at marketing. You're really good at, sales. You're better with numbers. I'm better with, and figuring those things out in the beginning will really save the relationship down the road when there's pressure and weight and 50 and 60 weddings on the books and things like that.
Yeah, agreed. For sure.
Sidebar over. Sorry. I just had to get that. Love that you do.
That's totally fine. That's totally fine.
Hey there, pardon the interruption. I wanted to take a moment and share with you about WEVA. WEVA is a professional association we started last year for venue owners and operators. It stands for Wedding and Event Venue Association, and it's the first professional association for venue owners and operators, specifically providing resources, education, and networking opportunities for venue owners and operators. Let's face it, owning a venue is very difficult, and if you own or operate a venue, or if you're considering owning or operating a venue, you need resources, networking, and a community that understands and supports you and your goals as you continue to grow your business. WEVA is just that. We've built it to be a support to you as you grow your venue business, and we want you inside of our community. So if this sounds interesting to you, please click on the link in the description in this video or wherever this video is linked, and we would love to welcome you into the community.
I know you're a big fan of personality tests too, which I think kind of goes along with this, right?
Oh, and you're probably wondering why I didn't mention that. So yeah, we use, there's so many ways that you can do this, I think effectively. We use something called predictive index. You can use DISC personality assessments. You can use, a variety of different things. But I think when you first agnostic to the direction that you're going to go in terms of assigning everyone roles, but very, very, very early on establishing what are the things that I'm going to need to have? What are the hats that I'm going to need to have someone wear in this business? And assigning those hats, but not assigning names to them, just kind of putting the hats there. And you can also do this in Lucidchart. I should be a spokesperson for them or something, but use my link, use my affiliate code. No, I think putting those hats together and then going and taking a personality assessment or something like that kind of even just digs a little deeper into who someone is above the surface helps, because then you might both be, let's say you're both introverts or you're both extroverts or you're both, whatever. Then all of a sudden it becomes clear, wow, we need a certain personality profile to wear this hat, and we're very heavy on the social side. We're just going to be, having all these ideas, and we're going to be the most creative, non-productive group ever. That. And so I think setting those up, the expectations around, what people are going to do, using a personality test to really drill in and understand, and then using that personality test as well in the onboarding prior to people getting hired will help you weed out some of the people that may even be a great fit for your company, but just don't necessarily complement the personality mix that you currently have. Personality tests combined with swim lanes. And we actually, for the clients we work with on the consulting side, as well as just for our team, we look at that. We actually had a family do it, and we basically said, hey, okay, there were six people in the family that were all going to do this together. And we said, okay, these are the things, these are the personalities, because at this point now with all the venues that we run, we've kind of assigned categories of personalities to different roles that are most effective. And so those are the ones we're looking for. So when people take the test, we're like, got it. We got our salesperson. We've got our accountant. We've got the person who's doing the setup of the tables and chairs, the operations. We've got the details person. And so, yeah, putting all those together is absolutely a must if you're going to DIY it. And for so many different scenarios, that DIY method is the preferable way to do it and the way you get started. And I think really kind of the first piece of like the stages in the life cycle of this business.
Yeah, agreed. So getting back to the life cycle, to your point, there's different entries. There's the investor that I mentioned earlier, and then there's the husband and wife team, right? Or family, or however you're getting into this. I'm going to speak to that life cycle first, because I feel like that's probably the majority of our audience. Like that'll be more applicable to them. So
And sorry to interrupt. After we do that, I'd love to just talk about that investor side, because I know both of us have had a lot of conversations with investors. And even if you are someone who's looking to start and operate your venue, there is, big industrial, corporate, institutional money that is entering this game. And so we should talk about that a little bit. But yeah, you're 100% right. Let's start here.
Yes. Okay. I have strong opinions.
I know. I was like, crap. Now I started us off on that. But okay, so let's take first life cycle, family.
Yeah. Okay. So usually it's just exactly like you described. Everybody's wearing all the hats, right? Like everybody's contributing. It's sink or swim, like all hands on deck kind of thing. From there, what we normally see is the owners realize, I don't want to be the operators anymore, right? So we want to be true owners, and then they hire for the operators. And usually the very first hire is the venue manager, and there's all different kinds of creative pay structures that we can get into in another episode. But it's usually venue manager and grounds crew. Every once in a while, we'll work with a husband that's like, I just want to mow the grass and not have to worry about anything else, right? And so he's like our grounds crew guy. Like, that's totally fine. If that's what makes you happy, I get it. And then, they go a year or two like that, and then they realize, okay, maybe we need like somebody dedicated to sales, and then we need a weekend event team. And I'm tired of just being an owner. I want to graduate and become like a true CEO, right? And so at that point, you probably have like 2 venue managers, and then they're over their specific smaller teams. Maybe this venue manager over here is in charge of the sales team, and this venue manager over here is in charge of, managing the bar, plus also the weekend event team, right? And then eventually the CEO is like, you know what? I want to be completely hands off, and I want to assume that investor role, and I want to go and invest in another location, a second location. It doesn't necessarily have to be a franchise based on like predictable definition of a franchise, right? Like just a second location, I'm going to get that off the ground, or I'm going to add on an additional revenue stream, and I'm going to be focused on that right here, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and
that's usually,
I love that you're breaking this down, because as you're talking, I'm going back in my mind and literally, I have these people's faces in my head. Blake Harris with the Haven KC, right? He built an incredible venue. When he was in the tech world, then he comes over, he starts this venue. They do great. First, I think they were 2.5 years in, and then a new property became available, very different property, but it was a new challenge. And he was looking for that. And so then he goes, and it's not necessarily like you said, a franchise in the typical definition, is just a new property. But so many people as well say, hey, we've done great here at this venue. It's cash flowing. The property it may be paid for, right? After 5-6 years, whatever it is, depending on how you purchased it. Now we want to go into single family rentals. Now we want to add some cottages or cabins on the property and get into kind of the Airbnb side and some of the vacation rentals. Or maybe it's just diversifying altogether and doing something in the stock market or whatever, right? Like people have different ways they get into it. And so I love this pathway, because if you are new to this industry, like there are so many different ways you can take it. And so thinking about this in advance, it's not too early to think about this in advance. because very much where you set your intention and like the way that you map towards that will like you want that roadmap at least in your head of like, we're pushing towards this so that you can make clear steps towards your goal instead of just kind of meandering around and really getting anywhere.
Yeah, agreed. You can always pivot and adjust.
Yeah, 100%. Lindsay, I'm curious, when you are working with venue owners who are going to be owner operators, and you kind of went through that initial life cycle of saying, hey, we're gonna now, instead of doing all of the things, we're gonna hire someone. Do you feel like that's a tough switch for people to make? Because essentially you go from being the doer to like the manager.
Yeah. So we get a lot of owner operators that are trying to only be the owner right now. And we see like they do a good job of training. If it's not our team that's training them, they do a great job of training because they still have control, right? Like while they're training, they still have control. The hard part, and I totally get it, is they try to white knuckle everything, which inevitably suffocates the growth if they don't learn how to slowly release and let the people that they've hired do what they have hired them to do.
Why do you think that is? Just like the letting, I mean, because obviously it's their thing that they've grown, but like what else like practically is behind that?
I think it totally makes sense, right? Like all of our business, like I truly believe that we should all treat our businesses like a business. We should run our businesses like a business, but there's still a psychological factor in there that I have poured my blood, sweat, and tears in this. I have literally built this with my own two hands. And now I am trusting this potentially stranger that I have vetted very, very well, but still, some people are really great interviewers. And I'm handing this out, like the success and the livelihood of my family, I'm handing it over to them.
Yeah.
Like, it's nerve-wracking. I get it.
For me, a lot of it, and I've seen this, but also felt this, it comes down to identity. Like, you are a doer. You're a busy person that gets things done. You're the mover and shaker in the group, and usually someone who is like that, who's the fire starter, who is kind of like a ball of energy and running everywhere and knowing how to do everything. They're surrounded by a supporting role, and it's oftentimes very difficult to extract that kind of key player, that star, out. And the other thing, Lindsay, that we haven't even really talked about is their name. Oftentimes, even if the venue's brand is very different than the actual owner, the owner's name is going to be appearing in reviews. It's going to be very much like they're going to be a very essential part, and especially with how geographically, tied down a venue is, right? It's not a service that's just kind of everywhere. It's a venue that's located in a community, and oftentimes that owner has invested in the community, and so it is a very personal thing, right?
Yep. It's not just a lot of times us educators, like we talk about online presence, online reputation, but there's a whole nother element for venue owners. They very much have a in-person reputation that is on the line within their community too.
Yeah. There's a totally different video that we could talk about, because that I think is a big part. That's a competitive advantage that I think that owner operators who are well established in communities have over venue management companies, and even institutional money that comes in, even if they're going to buy the most gorgeous venue. I think outsiders kind of like that have to work extra hard to get in the community and be very intentional with saying, hey, we're going to have the local daddy daughter dance for the school here at our property. We're going to do a pumpkin carving event or a floral event or something for the community. We're going to bring in some of the different groups. We're going to have a Toastmasters group on Tuesday mornings come and use the venue, right? Those types of things bring people to the space. And I think, again, if you're listening to this and you're managing venues, like take the time that it takes to bring the community into the space. It's definitely something we're focusing on, and we have been focusing on making sure that we're locally activated. But yeah, let's continue moving through this cycle. Let's talk just for a second around the real estate, the institutional money, because I think we both want to talk about that, and we should probably have another conversation about that for sure. You and I both have had these conversations. We'll get a call from them separately, totally. And it's very interesting. We've had conversations and then we're like, hey, did you talk to them? Yeah, I talked to them too. That's interesting. What's the mindset that you're hearing come through from some of these companies? And then I'll kind of share what I've heard.
I am trying to think of an eloquent way to express my opinion.
I'll go. You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. So I think that a lot of these funds, different private equity groups, like a fund that I'm thinking of right now, like they see the wedding industry as a multi-billion-dollar industry. They see venues having a real estate play in it that feels like there is a part that's a little bit unshakable in terms of things that obviously we saw the entire industry heavily shaken through, the pandemic and all of that. But they see it as kind of one of those industries that really is not going to be disrupted as much through AI. And in terms of a diversification from maybe the typical buy box that they have, it's like, let's invest in this it has a hard asset as a part of it. And then also there's a service component of it. And even though it's fairly complex, how difficult could it be? There's people getting married. And so there's a little bit of an idea, I think a little bit of a romanticizing around it or an oversimplification around success. And just saying, hey, it's a shoo-in. Everyone's getting married. Even though we do see some numbers that marriage rates are declining ever so slightly here and there, even though we see that, it feels like a pretty safe and sure bet for kind of a long-term investment. And if money is not the issue necessarily, because, they may be sitting on a fund with $30 million in it, or $10 million in it, it kind of feels like that's easy. This is a winner.
Yeah.
Do you hear that? Are you kind of do you get that sense as well? What have you heard?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Yes. I had a wealth management firm. First of all, I've had 7 different, they're not related, they're completely different wealth management firms reach out to me probably within the last year, but within that last year, it was heavily concentrated into like 6 months. I don't know what was going on, but it was like, I heard from all of them within a 6-month time frame, and they were all asking similar questions, just in different formats, right? Looking for the same information. The largest one, I want to say the name because, and I can because I didn't sign an NDA, but also it's probably a little uncouth of me to say the name. Anyway, they flat out told me, we have $100 million that we have to spend just in wedding venues by the end of this year. And that was at the beginning of 2023. And what they were essentially wanting my role to be was the headhunter. So they wanted me.
Spoil the story for us. Did they spend the money?
They didn't spend it with me.
Okay, fair enough.
But they did not spend it with me.
Fair enough. I was like, man, $100 million player in this space. Now that we got to hear about that. Very cool. Okay.
If I had to bet, I would say they maybe acquired a handful of venues last year. I did not see them spending $100 million within a year because their buy box was so strict and slightly unrealistic.
So let's talk about that for a second. And This is really, I think I did versions from the overall topic, but I think it's important. It kind of comes back into it. So a buy box for someone is the stipulations or kind of what the venue, and they were looking to buy existing venues. Is that correct? Yeah. So what were they looking for, and kind of what are some buy box parameters that you've heard in the past?
So the specific one that I'm talking about, the $100 million, they wanted owner operated venues that had been operating within 3 to 5 years. So they're seasoned for 3 to 5 years. And they wanted them to have a revenue of at least $2.5 million with potential to add on additional revenue streams. But they wanted me to be the headhunter to run the market analysis in particular markets, find the top markets, and then they wanted to flood those specific markets, right? Which I have opinions on that too. We don't have to get into that today, but it boiled down to I'll be honest, my feathers got slightly ruffled because these are my people, right? Like, we're talking about the majority of the people that I work with are husband and wife teams. They're owner operators. I am helping them start up, and that 3 to 5 year mark, it's a cash cow at that point, right? Like, that they're in their sweet spot. They're in their sweet season. Usually they're coming back to me wanting to add on revenue streams. And so I have specific faces that pop into my mind when they're describing this buy box. And the fact that they wanted to pay a one-time fee of $2 million, but then so I just was super blunt. And they were honest. They said that they had followed me for a long time, and they knew that I don't have much of a filter. So I just flat out told them, I said, I don't see this working, because why would a privately owned venue, an owner operator, husband and wife team, if they are bringing in 2.5 revenue with the potential to add on additional revenue streams, why would they do a one-time payday with you?
Especially because they probably have not been doing that well or as well in the first 12 to 18 months at least, probably with that 24-month marker as a bit of a tilting point of saying, hey, we finally got our systems in place. We got a good team in place. Now let's start making some money. You're paying off loans. You've got a bunch of different things going on. Yeah, it's like you've invested, it feels like, $10 million. You need a couple of years for the thing to pay you back a little bit.
Yeah. So, like, I understand where they were coming from a business standpoint, but also, like, if I had a past client come to me and say, hey, you were approached, this is the offer, I would say, hell no. Mm-hmm. Turn it down. Don't waste your time, right? Because it's a one-time payday when you have all this potential for growth, right? Like, you've already done the hard stuff.
Yeah.
You do hard things. Keep going.
Yeah. That's such a beautiful segue to kind of continue down this train, because the end, like where you do want to go, really, really is important to know. And if your goal is to scale and exit like that, there are funds out there that are interested. There is institutional money that's coming to play in our industry, and you could very well have a buyer. So if that's the map towards the 3 month, or 3 month, 36 month, 3-year mark of scaling the systems up, but you can't build yourself. If you're going to do that, you can't build yourself into the operations team, because they're going to want to pull you out as the operator and be able to stick anyone in. So that is a great segue to talking about kind of what's the next step. So we're at where we stopped, 3-year mark, maybe. So we've got a team in place. We've got a venue manager, sales manager. We've got some, other team members. If someone wants to get out of the venue completely, they could sell, right? Or if the venue is something that they don't want to ever sell the physical land, but they still need it to be operated, what are some options?
Hiring a team to operate it for you, a lot like what y'all do, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. Management. And then there's always a lease back. That's an option as well, So like, if you want to keep the real estate, but you don't want to keep the business, you sell the business, keep the land, and then the business just leases from you because you own the land.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I was in a Facebook group and I saw somebody, it was an anonymous participant, but I saw someone who said, hey, I have a lease on this building, it's like a 3-year lease or something like that. I want to get out of this business. But they had business, they had, contracts already signed and things like that. Lease was good, so they were going to sign the lease over. The owner of the building was comfortable with them doing that. I'm just wondering, though, is that a good strategy for someone, like, if you're listening to this and you don't have a venue yet, but you want to start in this space, is signing a lease, like a 3-year lease like that, and getting in and running the venue, but not owning the property? Is that a good, like, what should we be thinking? What should someone be thinking about when they consider moving down that route for venue management or venue, just being involved in this industry?
I think it's a good option if you're end game. So I have a lot of aspiring venue owners that'll reach out and say, I know this is what I was made to do, but I have zero experience. I'm getting turned down in funding because I don't have the experience. And so with a lot of them, I'll tell them, why don't we shift gears and look at leasing options to get you that experience, to get you the track record, to get you those financials that the bank wants to see, and prove, like, you can take it to the bank and be like, look, I was profitable very first time out of the gate. Like, I just need you to help me become bigger, right? Like, let's move on to the next thing. Now, I do think leasing is a great option for certain scenarios such as that. There are things that you need to look at, and we should totally do another episode on leasing. A lot of people think of leasing like, I have to lease like a warehouse space, right? I have to be downtown, but that's not necessarily true. The lease back, like what I was talking about, where they're not, the current owner isn't selling the real estate, but he also doesn't want to manage a team. He doesn't want to do the business, right? Like, he's just selling the business itself. And then the new owner of the business is leasing the venue from the real estate company.
That, to me, I think we should absolutely do another episode on, because I think that there are a lot of dangers when it comes to brand around that. And that's kind of one of the things why Common Sense Events has focused on managing existing brands. And I mean, we'll help start a brand, but our model really is centered around management of the existing brand that's on the property currently, because we can't pick up that brand and take it to a different area. Like, people are getting married at, Milagro Winery, one of our current properties. They are getting married there. They don't necessarily, like, they bump into our company, Common Sense Events. They obviously work with our employees and all of that, but really they're getting married at Milagro Winery, located in Ramona, right? Like, that's where they're going, and that's the association, the affiliation. They understand that it's managed by a different company and things like that, but they're getting married at that property. And so I think for owners, that adds in a little bit of safety almost, because if they ever needed to move away from working with us, they still have that brand and that positive association to the property. Whereas if you end a lease agreement with somebody and there used to be a venue called, the Oaks or something on it, and then that leaves, you're taking with it SEO, search stuff, you're taking with it, I mean, so much that's the actual physical building. You're smiling. I'm curious, like, your thoughts on this.
I'm smiling because I totally see your point. I have seen exceptions to the rule be successful.
Really? Okay, so share.
Yeah. So this was a long time ago. I was just getting started. Ohio, I think, was the location. Columbus. We're right outside of Columbus. Anyway, she had the scenario that I was just talking about. She couldn't get funding because lack of experience. And so she signed a lease agreement, built up a track record, was super successful, and had built a name for herself, but was ready to own the real estate because she knew that was the investment that she needed, right? And it fit her goals at the time. So, but her brand was so strong because she had built up brand recognition, the client experience, all of the SEO and all of that. And so she put together an entire marketing plan on, we have switched locations, right? And so, and you think about it, there are other brick and mortars that do this all the time, right? Like florists, they outgrow their space, have to move to a bigger space. We've moved, right? So there's entire marketing plans.
Have I had her on the show? Or do you know her name? You don't have to say her name, but we need to talk after this because I want to have her on the show. If not, I'm very curious. I am overwhelmed with. We need to have a separate show on this, 100%.
Yeah, 100%. But I was smiling because for you as a management company, you could just add on another client, right? So, like, let's say Milagro decided, I found this incredible property. I want to move my brand. You already know the brand, right? And so you're going to move with them, help them through the transition, and then still manage it at this new location. Meanwhile, a new buyer came in, purchased the old property. You go to them and say, hey, I know this property like the back of my hand. Let me run this for you. And then you essentially have a whole other client.
That is very true. I like that one. Adapting on the other client. That's a good one. I like it. Well, that's really cool. Our time together is drawing to a close, but this has been super interesting because I think just kind of analyzing, and we should probably draw this. And I was saying even before we got on, we should like name some of these phases because these are some of the different phases that go through. And when you go through succession and when you do like succession planning, you're planning for the success of the business, you're planning for your level of involvement, and how you are involved and how you show up in this business as a 25-year-old newlywed, or with one child is going to be very different than if you have 4 kids, or it's going to be very different than if you're 6 kids, right? Very different if you, are 60 or 70 and you start this because it's going to be a retirement business. And that oftentimes, in fact, I've had conversations with clients that have done that, and they're 55, 60 when they start, they're 5 years in, they've got a venue that's crushing it, but now to take it to the next level, they've got to hire a team, and they may not have some of the systems. And so now they have to invest back in the system. So it'll take them another 2-3 years to kind of get that. And is that how you want to spend your retirement? So some of those things, kind of thinking about it before you get into it, or if you are in that stage, giving Lindsay a call, giving myself a call, helping us walk through, because we don't work with everyone we talk to. Sometimes it's not a fit, but it is a good opportunity to say, hey, what are my options here for venue management? And how can I leverage the resources that are in my community and my network? And of course, I have to give a plug to Weeva because that is what that community is all about. And if you are a venue owner, you should be in Weeva because regardless of the life cycle of business that you're in, you need that community and that support system of people that are going to be there with you and also going to be you can check some of the information you're getting from like professionals. Like, don't listen to everything that you hear on a podcast or a YouTube channel or whatever. Like, go check it, and you're going to want that association community of peers to help vet the information, and also provides that that mentorship, that community, the camaraderie, and all of that. So anyway, this has been great, Lindsay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, this one was fun.
Yeah, we know now we have a hot topic in leasing that wasn't on the roadmap of discussions, I don't think, but we got to put it down because that's going to be a good one.
Yeah, agree.
Okay, awesome. Bye, everyone. We will see you all in the next episode. Hey there, friends. Jonathan here, and I wanted to share about Common Sense Events Management Services. Common Sense Events is my company, and we professionally manage and operate venues all across the United States, and we would love to have the opportunity to chat about your venue if management would be the right solution for you. This is a great opportunity for people who are looking to maybe get out of the industry, or maybe they want to keep their property, but they don't want to sell it, but they still want to make money from it. Our team comes in and we do everything from the marketing, the sales, the operations. We hire a local team. We take care of the taxes. We pay them. We keep them accountable. We take care of all the management. We do all the sales process. We do all the operations, everything from setting up to tearing down tables and chairs, and everything that it takes to run an incredible wedding. The best part about this all, it is not super expensive. We actually have a lot of these agreements set up as management contracts where there's a revenue share. And so it is really a awesome and frequently affordable way to work with an outsourced management company so that your venue stays under your brand name, but you have a custom venue management solution for you so you don't have to be working 80 hours a week. If this sounds appealing to you, please send us a message using the link in the description of this video or podcast. You could also send us an email at venues@cseventservices.com. We would absolutely love to hear from you and see if there's a way that we could partner with you and serve you.